Hey everyone, welcome to Let's Write Books, a weekly live stream show where writers can come together for community, advice, and most importantly, a dedicated time for you to work on your book. Today on Let's Write Books, we're going to focus on using the world and the setting of your novel to enrich your story and your characters. I'm Micah Crowdy. I'm the head of writing at Butterdocs, the perfect app for writing your novel. It's what I'm using to write my novel, and there's a link below in the description if you want to learn more about Butterdocs. Before we get into it, I want to know, where are you in the world? I love seeing where everyone across the globe is when we do these shows. I want to know what kind of book you're writing and where are you in the process of writing that book? To answer these questions myself, I am in Los Angeles. I'm writing a novel that, like, genre-wise is kind of a literary fiction meets kind of thriller thing. It's about three estranged best friends who come home for their 20th high school reunion because of a secret from their past that is going to be potentially revealed to the detriment of them. And I'm like super early in the process. That's why I'm doing this show. I'm developing this book kind of live with you guys through these free writing prompts. So far, the first week we worked on developing the story ideas. Last week we talked about characters, developing our characters, which was really great. And I got so much out of that. And today, we're going to be working on world and setting. So if you're new, basically we're going to be doing 3 25-minute sprints, and you can either work on your own thing during those sprints, or you can do the free writing prompts with us. So it sort of depends on where you are in the process, but these prompts, I think, can be very, very helpful. And today, I mentioned the prompts that we're going to be doing are about world and setting. And I think this is kind of interesting because share my screen here. World building is often just referred to as something that I feel like you hear about more in genre stuff like fantasy and science fiction, where obviously, it's important because you are building an entire world, right? You're building a world from scratch. And so it makes sense that you'd have to think a lot about it. But I feel like really in all forms of writing that have the setting, that have place, that the setting really informs the story in a lot of ways. And it's not just with genre writing. So for instance, you could be writing even a memoir, nonfiction, and the setting is still very important because you're sort of choosing which details to talk about, which details to ignore, where to go deep, where to kind of be on the surface, and like how these interact with your characters. So today, the prompts that we are going to be working on are: first prompt is, what aspects of the setting/world have shaped your characters into who they are now, and how have they done so? So we're going to work on that during the first writing sprint. In the second writing sprint, it'll be, how can the setting/world create obstacles, challenges, or opportunities for your characters moving forward? How can the setting world affect the action of the story? And in the third prompt, what is the vibe of your setting/world? How can it affect the tone and or pacing of your novel? How will the reader feel when transported there? And then there's a bonus prompt here, which you can kind of swap in for one of the other ones, or maybe do later. But this is, how is your setting/world a reaction to the one that we're living in now? For instance, it could be a linear progression of the world we're in now, or a pendulum swing backlash kind of reaction to the world we're in now. So the first prompt is more about your character. How is the world shaped your character who they are now? The second prompt is moving forward in your story. How can the setting of the world affect things? And then the third prompt is kind of about tone, which is in the feel of your story. So those are kind of the aspects that we're going to be working on for the prompts today. So that should be pretty fun. You can also download this if you're a Butterdocs user, you can add this note here as a prompt. There's a link in the description for this note template. You can click on the link, and when you click on the link, you'll end up at a screen that looks something like this. And this is the setting/world free write prompts, the template that I created. You copy to my templates, and if you're signed in your browser, it'll add it to your templates. And then once you do that, you'll have that note in your templates forever. And you can use that for all your writing projects in Butterdocs moving forward. And the way that you add it in Butterdocs is really simple. When you are going here to the notes menu right here, and there's a little arrow here that says new note from template, and then you'll do the settings / world free write prompts, and it will create a new template there from that note. So you'll be able to, again, use this in all your projects moving forward. So yeah, that should be pretty fun for you and hopefully helpful. Let's check in with the chat. Good to see everyone. Elia in Italy, we're writing a short story, but a fantasy book in its first draft. Awesome. Well, glad you're here, man. Barbara, welcome back from LA, working on a magical realism story. Fantastic. Craig, welcome back in St. Louis. We're in a vomit draft. I'm currently reading and revising it. However, today I'm reading someone else's draft that I'm way behind on providing feedback on. Good to do that. It's so funny when you're reading other people's scripts or novels or whatever, manuscripts, and you're just like, oh man, like how many weeks have passed since I said I was going to do this. So good luck with that. E. William Nutter in West Virginia, writing a sci-fi fiction novel. It's nearly 20 years in the making. I finished it once, but wanted better results. So it's like draft 14 at this point. Well, glad you're here. Hopefully, maybe this is the draft. This is the one, man. Welcome from Sweden. Working on draft 0 of my fantasy novel. Just need to know what I want to do with it at the moment. Hopefully, the free writes today on world building will give you some ideas to work with. South Dakota Condition is here. Welcome. And Teji from San Jose, welcome back. Doing a structural cleanup of Act 1 before drafting Act 2. Awesome. Amy Lane in Nashville. Memoir is this world. My fantasy novel is in the discovery phase. Cool. It's interesting, though, like I was mentioning earlier, even though the memoir is in this world, we still choose what aspects of the world, that we want to show. Because, for instance, you can talk about this world, like this world can be a cruel place. It can be a happy place. It can be all these things at once. And it's depending on kind of like what story you're telling. So I think it's fascinating how setting can affect true stories. I was reading this novel, or not this novel, a nonfiction book I just finished called The Warmth of Other Suns, about the Great Migration in the United States from like 1915 to 1970. It's basically the migration of African Americans from the South to the West and the North. And it was kind of talking about just like, the things they left behind, the things in the South that they'll never have again, and like how much that affects the story and how much that affects their like understanding of the place that they live and what matters to them. So it's like even in nonfiction and memoir and even in poetry. I'm actually going to do a little reading today or from an essay about poetry. But first I want to say hi to Tiffany drawing today. Oh, some of the world building my graphic novel. Oh, that's awesome. So I've been trying to think of like what it is that I'm going to be doing, moving forward in terms of on Let's Write Scripts, I do the sandwich of the week, right? Where I share the sandwich of the week. And for Let's Write Books, I wanted to do something, and I might try to do something where it's basically like a reading each week, kind of on the topic. So this is from an essay that I was reading earlier this week. And I thought it really had relevance into setting and world building. And it's from this essay called The Past and Pastoral by Cecily Parks. And it was in this literary journal, Ecotone, that I was reading. And so I wanted to read this. I thought it was kind of fascinating. One poet follows a rocky road. Oh, you know what? This is blocking part of it so you can see it. There we go. One poet follows a rocky road up a hill toward racing clouds. His coat has a ragged hem, and its pockets are stretched from holding sticks that he collects from roadsides to feed the fireplace at home in the evening. But now it's daytime. There's a field of spring barley and a young girl alone in it, swinging her scythe and singing a work song that distance makes unintelligible. The wind from the firth musses her yellow hair. Will no one tell me what she sings? The poet asks. He's frustrated, but he must enjoy the frustration because he doesn't draw close enough to hear her song. If he did, he might see the split on the girl's thumb where the cold has broken down the tissue of her skin, the calluses on her palms, or a sore on her lip. While writing The Solitary Reaper, if William Wordsworth had gotten close enough to the Reaper to hear her song, she wouldn't be solitary anymore. Her words would mix with his. Predicated on distance and impression, the pastoral invited Wordsworth to overwrite the Reaper's words and hardship, the contours of the barley field she labored in but all likelihood didn't own. The poet will never know her field song. He goes home to write his poem by the fire. The only song, a tourist song, is his. And I thought this was fascinating because it's even in this, a poet writing a poem, his distance from the setting, the world, impacts the understanding of it. The pastoral is sort of this idealized kind of romantic form of poetry about like the countryside and everything, but it's romantic, it's idealized. It's from a very high level. You're not seeing the calluses, you're not seeing the cracked skin, all those kind of things. And I just thought that was really cool that like even in these other genres where we don't necessarily think about setting and world, that like how we understand it, our experience of reading it is going to be influenced greatly by the author's understanding of the setting world and how they portray it. So yeah, I thought that was a good reading to start with today before we get into things. Great. So I feel like with that, we can kind of get into the first writing sprint. And this one, if you're doing the prompts, is what aspects of the setting/world have shaped your characters into who they are now? How have they done so? So it's about when we meet the characters, how has the setting and world crafted them? How have they been shaped into who they are when we meet them? So I'm going to put great point rating. Thanks. Yeah, I liked it. I thought that was a really great passage about this. And I think it just really goes to say that like world building isn't just, I don't know, the languages or the kingdoms or the planets or, all these kind of things, but like it goes so much deeper than that. So I'm going to put 25 minutes on the clock, play some music, and then we will check in on the other side and we'll see how the writing's going for us today. So here we go. Let's happy writing, everyone. All right, that is the end of the first writing prompt, the first 25-minute prompt, which was what aspects of the setting/world have shaped your characters into who they are now, and how have they done so? I want to know how that sprint was for you. Are the muses with us? Are the thoughts flowing today? Are the juices flowing? Are the ideas coming to you? And if you were doing this free writing prompt, I want to know, did it spark anything? Did you learn anything about your characters? Did you learn anything about the world or how the world could impact them? Any nuances or facets of their personality or their wants or their likes or their desires that came from it? Yeah, let me know. Let me know in the chat. For me, one thing I was kind of struck with as I was doing that sprint is the intersection of place and time, because my setting has sort of changed over the time. It takes place in like a small town, and when my characters were young, it was kind of like an idealized small town where they like rode their bikes around and everyone knew their name, and they're like a main street with small shops. And then as they went into adolescence, the town kind of started declining. And so you sort of have this sort of parallel journey of their lives and sort of adolescence and the scales falling from their eyes and anxieties and kind of everything, seeing the world from this perfect childhood, type place to a more an adult view of the world as the world itself was actually changing, which was kind of interesting for me to like see the parallels. And then how that changed, because my book is a lot about friendship, how that changed then in the world solidified their bond as they lost this sort of aspect of the setting of the world that they loved. They sort of turned to each other for that kind of comfort and stability, and then strengthened their bonds, intensified their bonds, which then is great because at some point they were falling out. And if you know anything about chemistry, like the more energy in a bond between molecules, the more explosive the rupturing of that bond is. So that was really helpful. And another thing that struck me was how some of your characters can embrace the attributes of their setting, the world they're from, that shapes how they believe, how they see the world, and they carry that with them, and how other characters can reject those same things, which I think is fascinating. So you have two characters with the same upbringing, and one of them will use that upbringing, the people they met, the rules, these sort of unspoken rules, the culture, the climate even, and sort of be like, this is the world, this is what's normal, this is what I like. And the other character can have the exact opposite reaction and want everything to be different later in life. If they grew up in a sunny place, maybe they want to go to a cold place or something different. If they grew up in a small town where everyone knows everyone's business, which I think is an aspect of setting, then they want to go to a big city where there can be anonymous. So you have these different aspects of different reactions to setting. Because I think sometimes you can have like, okay, the setting is this, so it's kind of shaped, this is how everyone thinks, but not everyone's going to think like that. You're going to have a variety of reactions to that aspect of the setting here. Cash, Maniro, welcome. We had some people join. By the way, yeah, if you joined during that writing sprint, so glad you're here. And where was I in the chat here? Yes, Maniro, welcome here. Cash stopping by to say hello. Nephew sharing about her story. In an ancient world where most are focused on daily survival, my character falls into becoming a healer by thinking outside the box and exploring her world and using the forest flora and fauna. Flora and fauna are teachers who act over time and frustrates her mother by not being normal and having offspring. I mean, I could definitely see how Nephi in that story, how the setting in the world are going to have a great impact on the story moving forward and what she has access to, but also like has shaped that character into who they are. That's pretty cool. Elia had a good sprint. Awesome. Rosie joining from Northampton, the UK. Glad you're here. Awesome. These prompts help me bottom line the character or hone in on bigger issues to get detailed about. Yeah, that's fantastic. It is interesting because like this prompt is about setting, but like I'm free writing about character, because for me, I mean, character is the heart of everything. And it's really about how setting is only important in how it like affects your characters and the story, I think, moving forward, right? Like you can have all these details that are wonderful for you, that are fascinating for you as the writer, but like the reader doesn't necessarily care about those. What they care about is the things that affect your characters. Nisi is saying, this is good. I just realized how I can intertwine the world into the characters' experiences arcs. Since set in the real world, I previously didn't take into consideration as much. Yeah, I totally get that. And I think that's kind of a thing, that's what I was talking about earlier, how we think of the real world as the real world, But anytime we're writing something, we're only presenting one view of a world. And we as the writer choose what that view is. And so really, even writing about the real world is an act of creation. It's an act of fiction in some way, because you're sort of determining how is this world going to be perceived by the reader. Because, you know, a lot of different people can look at the same aspects of the real world and see different things about them. And good morning, Nisi, as well. Glad you're here. Barbara, loved this prompt. Discovered new ways to enhance my world and story. Add a lot of depth and 2 new characters. Ideals reflect. Oh, great. Awesome. So happy. I focused so much of my efforts over the years on the plot, characters, the rules of the world, but little into setting. So I love this sprint. It helped a lot. Oh, fantastic. Setting can reflect character, story. Exactly. 100% agree. James, my world is set 1,000 years in the future, so worlds at the far end of the solar system and cultivated to look like the Earth with terraforming. Ooh, that's interesting. I wonder like how they're different though, because I would imagine, you know, if the planet's a different size, if it's a different distance from the sun, like if there's all these little variations, even if you're trying to make it look like the Earth, like it's not going to be exactly like the Earth. So like, you know, what's like maybe the day isn't 24 hours, maybe the day is 22 hours. And if so, how does that change, you know, time, you know, and how people's perception of time, like how many hours in the day they have to work and sleep, you know, and like the culture of staying up late or going to bed early, you know, like there's so many different aspects of things I think that could affect. That was awesome. Great. I'm so glad that was a good sprint for you guys. Quick announcement. Obviously we have Let's Write Books next week. And next week we are going to we're going to focus on finding the best beginning for your novel. So that's what our prompts are going to be about. They're going to be focused on the start of your story. And then the week after that, we are going to focus on the middle of the story. And then the week after that, the end of the story. And so I'm kind of excited about those prompts. So finding the best beginning of your story is going to be next week. You can RSVP for that. There's a link in the description below to do that. All right. I'm loving it today. I think we're going to jump into the second sprint now. And this one is about, so if the first prompt was sort of about how the world affected things up to now, things in the past affected the characters. Now this is going to be how are things moving forward? How is the setting going to affect things? So prompt 2, how can the setting/world create obstacles, challenges, or opportunities for your characters moving forward? How can the setting/world affect the action of the story? So yeah, we were sort of prologue maybe for the first writing sprint, turning our characters into the characters we're going to see throughout the story. But in this action of the story itself, the arcs of the characters, their journeys, the things they overcome, how can the setting affect that? I think there are some obvious ways, you know, that can affect it. You know, if your story is a journey of climbing a mountain, that obviously the setting is, you know, an avalanche is going to affect that, or things like that. But I think there's also more subtle ways that the setting can affect the story and provide obstacles and opportunities. So yeah, that is what we're going to do the next writing sprint on. So I'm going to put 25 minutes back on the clock, play some music, and yeah, we're going to get back into it, and we'll chat a little bit more after this writing sprint. I'm going to change up the music here to night driving, get a nice groove going, and I will catch you all on the other side of the right sprint. Here we go. All right, that is the end of our second writing sprint of 3, 2 down, 1 more to go. Yeah, so in that one, we were looking prompt 2, how the setting world can create obstacles, challenges, or opportunities for our characters moving forward, how the setting world can affect the action of the story. If you joined during that sprint, welcome. So glad you're here. This is Let's Write Books, brought to you by Butterdocs, the novel writing software, which is what I'm using. And I think a lot of you guys are as well. We're going to do one more sprint, but I want to know how'd that go. Did you learn anything, any ideas about your story moving forward? Did any great obstacles or opportunities arise? Yeah, get in there, or just let me know how your writing is going as well. Oftentimes the second writing sprint can be where like the best one, because it's like it's the Goldilocks, right? You're warmed up and you're not too tired. So that's the second writing sprint. That was really helpful for me. One, it gave me the job of one of my characters. I had been kind of circling. I knew some stuff about him. I didn't know exactly what he was doing. And I think his job is actually going to be a direct reaction or result of the setting and the changes in the setting. And so that's really helpful for me. And it also kind of, this sprint made me realize like one of the big things my characters are actually going to be doing in the action of the story. So it's always like, what are we actually going to see your characters doing is an important thing. Like you can have ideas and things you're exploring, but like, what are they actually going to be doing on the page? And so I figured out, or kind of like crystallized more what one of those things is going to be kind of throughout the script. Or sorry, not script, the book. Sorry, you can tell I'm also a screenwriter throughout the book. But it's not just the actions they're going to be doing, but then the next step is like, okay, how that action they're going to be doing, which is a result of their environment, of their setting, how that action is going to then kind of affect them physically and emotionally, kind of leading up to the climax. So it's sort of like starting with a thing in the setting, which is then affecting the action, which is then affecting the characters, which is then affecting the story climax in some way. So it's like all those links in the chain kind of coming from the setting and a particular change that's happening in the setting, which is sort of prompting all those things, which is, I think, one of the cool things about the idea of setting in world and how it can kind of set off these chain reactions moving forward. A couple other things I want to say. Speaking of scripts, which I just mentioned earlier, if you write scripts, please join us on Wednesday for Let's Write Scripts. Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific. There's also a link, I believe, in the description to register for that. We're having a special guest this week, Jamie Nash, who's an expert on Save the Cat. He wrote the Save the Cat Beat Sheet Workbook and other Save the Cat books. And so he's going to be joining us, writing with us, answering some questions, probably be talking about the Save the Cat structure. So you can come, you can write, work on your script, ask questions, ask Jamie questions, and that should be a really good time. Another thing I wanted to mention is just an announcement, is that in ButterDocs, we added note categories. So as a way to organize your notes, if you go into your settings, all settings, and then notes here on the left, you'll see these categories, and you can add a category like characters. I've already added these: characters, world building, free writing. I don't know, what's something off the top of my head that I could call this category. I don't know, plot or something like that. And then, delete that. So then in your notes, you can then kind of filter based on those categories that you could create when you create new notes, you can actually create notes in those categories. So an easier way to organize your notes. And obviously, you can link between the notes. But yeah, those categories have been added. So a way to, increase the organization of the notes. So, we're constantly updating ButterDocs, constantly adding new things. So there's also in ButterDocs, there's a way, if you click on the question mark kind of at the bottom, you can suggest features, I believe. Anyways, so let's see, checking in with the chat. Your name was like Evan or Ethan or something. Anyway, I believe Wild Heart Workshop. Glad you joined in late. The vibes have been pretty good, man. Hopefully you enjoy them as well. E. William was having a good time but had to bounce. So glad he was here. And then on this last sprint, Amy Lane got a scene out of it, a not nice scene that the character will carry into the future present. Ooh, a not nice scene. Interesting. Nephi said, this prompt went from creating danger for the characters to an impassioned blog idea. That's fun. I love it. The beauty of free writing is you don't know where it's going to end up. Like you can start with a goal and you're like, all right, I'm going to free write on this. But like, you just got to like chase the ideas where they go, and maybe it leads to an impassioned blog idea. Nisi here. I was able to categorize locations that inspired me to learn more about some places mentioned so I can build out more of the lore and add to my story. I'm excited to see where this goes. That's awesome. That reminded me of something actually from an earlier sprint from the first sprint we were doing, where I was thinking about places, because the setting of my novel is based on a small town I lived in briefly right after college. And so I was kind of like thinking back about that town and like what I need to be a researcher for. But then I was also thinking about like how, in thinking about my characters' childhoods, like I could draw from my own childhood and like what aspects of the setting of my childhood I could add in. Yeah, anyway, so there we go. Manir was looking forward to, I think she's going to join on Wednesday. Barbara's loving the notes categories. Fantastic. Katie's loving the notes categories. And it's Evan. Oh, fantastic. And you're working on paring down the world building. Love it a little too much. Things that are essential to the overarching plot so my characters don't have to do exposition dumps to explain. Yeah, no, I mean, you touched it right there, man. Put your finger on it. The world building is beautiful. It can enrich your story in so many ways, but like, you got to realize the difference between what's fascinating to you as the writer and what the reader cares about. And like exposition dumps are, just never good. I mean, they can be good. I guess I don't want to say anything is always bad, but like in general, they're not great. And really, that's kind of what these the prompts that we've been doing today, which you might have missed as you joined late. But the first one was, what aspects of the setting/world have shaped your characters into who they are now? Have they done so? The second one, how can the setting/world create obstacles, challenges, or opportunities for your characters moving forward? How can the setting/world affect the action of your story? And then the last sprint, which is going to be, what is the vibe of your setting/world? How can it affect the tone and or pacing of your novel? How will the reader feel when transported there? And so, yeah, these prompts are sort of aimed at focusing in your world building. They're not about like creating the language or the politics or whatever. Like you can do that on your own. These prompts are more on trying to get the juice out of your world building and how they actually can affect the story, the characters, and the tone and the different aspects of your novel here. Nisi said there's also the free write led her to an idea for a documentary. That's fantastic. A blog post. Oh no, Neffy it led to a blog idea. Nisi, it led to a documentary idea. Fantastic. I love free writing because it can like go, so many different ways. All right. Where are we? I have mentioned Let's Write Books next Monday. If you want to RSVP, that's in the description. I've mentioned Let's Write Scripts, our screenwriting show. So on Wednesday, we're having a special guest, and you can RSVP for that in the description. If you want to check out Butterdocs more, there's a link to Butterdocs/fiction in the description. I think there's also a discount code there. If you want to check it out, you can get a little money, save a little money. And I think that is about it. We're going to just like keep rolling on to the third sprint, which I just mentioned. There's also the note template in the description if you want to add these free writing prompts to your Butterdocs account. So then you can just like use this these free write prompts over and over in all your different documents, all your different books. Okay, so now we're going to go into the third sprint. If you have to leave during this sprint, no worries. Thank you for coming by. Say farewell in the chat. Let me know how the writing went today. Hope to see you in the future. And if you stick around to the end, I will say final farewells at that point. The third one. So this is about vibe. It's about the setting of the world. It's about tone and pacing. And I think the kind of the third question is, for me, the most interesting one. But like, I don't know, maybe you'll disagree. But how will the reader feel when transported there? They're reading your book. They're in this world, whether it is a fantasy world, science fiction world, or just a slightly, different version of the real world is your view of some aspect of the real world. How are they going to feel when they're there? Is there a feeling of dread? Is there a feeling of excitement and opportunity, of energy, of sadness, of hope, but maybe just like a little bit of hope? That's interesting. And then also don't forget, we have our bonus prompt if you want to do that instead, which is, how is your setting/world a reaction to the one we're living in now? For instance, is it a linear progression of the world we're living in now? Is it some sort of backlash to the world, or some other reaction to it? So you can do that one instead. But I am going to do it 25 minutes on the clock. We're going to play some music again. And we'll chat one more time on the other side and say our farewells. But here we go, everyone. Let's do it. Happy writing. Okay, and that brings us to the end of our third writing sprint of 3, which means it's the last one, which means this is the end of Let's Write Books for Monday, February 3rd. I had to check the date there. But don't worry, we will be back in a week, Monday, February 10th. And you can RSVP for that at the link below. You can also join us on Wednesday for Let's Write Scripts if you're a screenwriter or want to do some screenwriting, or you can also work on your book or whatever you want there. But we're going to be talking about screenwriting and focusing on it. And you can RSVP for that in the link below as well. Also, I had a weird setting thing happen to me. Speaking of like world and setting, during that sprint, I like turned my camera off and went outside because there was like a hawk who had caught like a rodent and like flew off with it. And so it was just like a very strange thing that happened. Well, you can keep writing, just play some music, Manure, and hey, just because I've stopped doesn't mean you have to stop. You can keep going. Awesome. Teji's going to be there on this week and on Wednesday at Let's Write Scripts. And 'twas ace. Love that. So glad you all are here. This was fantastic. I mean, Neffy used up 2 pens. I love it. That's a lot of writing. All right. Hey, I'm so happy you guys were here. This was great. I had a great time. I got some great writing done as well. I really got a sense of the setting of the world and how it's impacting my characters. And I hope you did too. Again, next week, we're going to be talking about the beginning of your story and finding the best beginning for it. Until then, please be kind to yourselves and happy writing, everyone. Farewell.